what the needs may be. So what you see of the plans around us is actually a accumulation of all that input, and we basically are here today to see your input. Are we heading in the right direction? And Marty's going to do an overview presentation of the project to date, so we have a little overview of the PowerPoint. But what we tried to shape this meeting tonight is to have about a half-an-hour presentation to the group here, then break up for about 45 minutes so that you can go to each station and ask questions relative to this project. And then we're going to ask you to come back to seats here where we can basically begin to receive feedback, comments, questions, and so on. Over on this wall over here is the environmental section of the wall, so if you're interested in what the environment that we're dealing with, that wall there has a series of plans on it that shows you different types of environmental constraints that we're dealing with. The wall behind over here toward the exit, that is the area for the mill curve area, what used to be referred to as the Coca-Cola curves, as to how we're trying to work the turnpike in that area. The middle plan is a composite of the entire project. So if you really want to look at the magnitude of the project, how big this project is, look at that middle plan. So there's a lot of work that goes into this project. So on the left over here, Marty, so he can kind of go through the presentation. Feedback?
What's that?
Response. Feedback.
I'll explain it all. While I'm doing the presentation, I've asked the government to move the speakers forward. So I'm going to keep going, but hopefully that'll help out in the...
Stop in the sound, Mr. Bud.
All right, let's get started. By the way, I am going to go, hopefully, maybe 30 minutes or less, and then we're going to get into the workshop. So I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible. And what I'm going to do is just run through kind of project purpose, project schedule, and basically what we've done since the last hearing. We had a public meeting last August of last year, and I want to bring you to that. And what we're really trying to do tonight is in the previous meetings, we've talked about a wide range of alternatives. What we want to do is get them down to the proposed action so that we can move ahead with this project. So this meeting, whether you give us input today, just talking to us, fill out these forms, go on the website and fill out, this meeting is all about giving us input on what you hear tonight. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Let me first start with the purpose of this project. The purpose of this project is to address the capacity, safety, and access-related deficiencies along about a 3.5-mile segment of I-293 that begins just north of Exit 5 and then extends through into Exit 7. And we're going to do that in 3 ways. One, by correcting geometric and safety deficiencies while reducing congestion at problem locations. We're going to accommodate future traffic volume demands on the corridor. And also, we're going to improve the highway, access to the highway that is consistent with the long-term vision of the communities in the area, specifically Manchester and Goffstown. And when I get into the presentation, you'll understand what I'm talking about there. But that's what we're trying to do. And so when we look at any of these alternatives, what we're doing is we're judging them against this purpose. So we need to make sure whatever we're doing meets this general purpose. This is our project schedule. I'm not going to get into all the details of this, but I want to give you a sense of where we are on this. We started this project back here in the end of 2015. This is all of last year, 2016, where that little star there represents a public meeting we had last August. Where we are today is right here in June of 2017. So what we were doing early on, before the August meeting of last year, was mostly data collection, pulling together all the various alternatives. We presented that at those meetings. What we've been doing since that time, late last year and first half of this year, is taking all those alternatives and whittling them down based on our analysis, based on having meetings with the City of Manchester, with the town of Goffstown. We've made presentations to the selectmen in Goffstown. We've made presentations to the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. We've had meetings with all of the resource agencies looking at environmental impacts, cultural impacts. All of that has been going on over the last few months to get to this point. And so, like I said, what today is about is understanding what you are all thinking about. So, in addition to what you can tell us tonight, I want to remind everybody that there is a project website. It's www.293planningstudy.com. You can go to this website, and you can, any information of past meetings will be on here. Everything, all these plans that are shown here tonight, by sometime next week, we'll have them all on the website. This PowerPoint presentation that I'm showing you tonight, that will be on the website. So anything you miss here, you will be able to go to the website and see that. Probably most importantly, what's on this website, if you go to the left side here, there's a feedback button. And if you hit that feedback button, this page comes up. And it will allow you to enter any comments, any questions, and if you put your email address in here, an email comes directly to me, and I will respond to the questions. If you have ideas, if you have questions, send them to me, and I will send you an email back and respond to them. In fact, by the way, I'll just say that last week I received some questions and a really good comment about Exit 6 from somebody, and they unfortunately didn't put their email address on, so I haven't been able to respond to it. So if you're here tonight, come up and ask me the question, I'll get you the information. But this is a very useful information. After tonight, if you've got a question that you didn't think about tonight, go to the website, put it on there, and I will answer it directly. In addition to that, we have some newsletters. You may have got a copy when you come in. This is on the website. Periodically, we put these out just to let people know what's going on in the project. In addition, hopefully what you got, we have tonight is these input forms. And tonight, if you can get, at any time, if you want to write any comments down, you can leave them here tonight. We have a box out near the door. You can just drop them in there, and we'll go through those. It also has my name and address. If you wanted to, tonight, tomorrow, write something down, drop it in the mail, you can do that. It also has the website on there. You can go to the website and put your information in there. Bottom line is, there'll be time tonight to just talk to us one-on-one, but we want you, if you don't get that opportunity, or you don't feel comfortable tonight doing it, or if you think of something tomorrow or the next day, there's plenty of opportunities to give us your thoughts, and that's what we want. Okay, so like I said, what tonight is about, we need to make a decision on what the proposed action is. Based on all these previous meetings, all the analysis that we've done, we've been working very closely with a technical advisory committee, which is made up of members of the community and staff in both Manchester and Goffstown. We've been working through all of that. At this point, the New Hampshire DOT and the Federal Highway has to take all that input and say, okay, this is the proposed action we're going to move forward with. And once we do that, we, the consultants, are going to do much more detailed design, engineering, and identifying impacts, and we'll put an environmental documentation report together later in the year that'll have that all on the proposed action. That's why it's critical that as soon as we can arrive at the proposed action. So that, again, that's what tonight's about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first start at Exit 6, talk to you about what we've been doing at Exit 6. I'm going to move to Exit 7, and then I'm going to talk about the main line. And then after that, we'll break back out into the groups and let you ask whatever questions you want. So at Exit 6, this is existing Exit 6. It's the Amoskeag Circle. North, this is 293. North is to the right. This is the Amoskeag Bridge into Manchester. This is Goffstown Road that headed west into Goffstown. I'll tell you, I've worked on a number of these types of projects, and oftentimes on these projects you hear people that say, well, the existing is really not that bad of a problem. I have not heard that from anybody on this project from the very beginning. Everybody agrees the Amoskeag Circle is a problem. Today, what you have is you have heavy congestion up on the circle. The off-ramps, the northbound off-ramp actually backs out onto the highway. The northbound on-ramp actually has very little acceleration length, so as soon as you pull out, you're right onto the highway. Anybody coming south, you've got heavy volume of traffic entering the highway and exiting the highway in a tight weave movement, which has traffic not only stacked up on the ramps, but it also, anybody coming south down 293, they almost know to pull to the left because you're going to get backed up in that right-hand lane. All of that has to be addressed. So we've looked at a number of different options for reconstructing this interchange. And I'm not going to go through all of them because, again, we want to focus on where we are getting the ones that work the best. With the exception of one that I'm going to show you that we did get rid of, and you'll understand why I'm using this because I'm going to show you some changes we made to it. But in our meeting back in last August, one of the alternatives that we looked at was this. It was called the single point urban interchange. And what this did was, and by the way, all of these alternatives completely take out all the old ramps. The circle is gone, everything is gone, brand new interchange. What the single point urban interchange is all the ramps come into a single movement right here at a signalized intersection. Very similar to what's at exit 5 at Granite Street, where all the ramps come in very close at a signalized intersection. The only difference here is that at exit 5, the intersection is underneath and the highway goes over the top. At this location, it would be the other way around. The highway would be going underneath and the intersection would be on top. What happens here, just so you understand, is that this is the northbound off-ramp comes off here. You can take a right to go over the Amoskeag Bridge. You take a left to go to Goffstown. If you're coming over the Amoskeag Bridge, you can take a right to go northbound on 293, or you can come into the signal and take a left to head south. Same thing in the other direction. Coming from Goffstown, you can get on southbound in that fashion, or you can take a left at the signalized intersection and head north. That's how the single point interchange works. The one thing about this alternative that we showed back in August was, in addition to that interchange, we were showing another bridge crossing right here that connected Eddy Road over to Amoskeag. And what that allowed was that anybody on Eddy Road and on Front Street would have easy connection to the Amoskeag Bridge. Now, when we did our analysis of this, what we found out was that because we now have this new connection here, we have a new signalized intersection at this point. So there are 3 traffic signals along Amoskeag. What happens is that they're spaced very tightly together. And what we found is that our 20-year traffic volume projection showed that traffic would back up from this signal into the single point. For that reason, this wouldn't work. And so we've moved on from this. And I'm not going to talk about all the other ones we moved on from, but we've moved on from this one. You'll see in a moment why I showed you this. When we found that this didn't work, we moved on to and developed this alternative, which is called the offset diamond interchange. And the way this works is that we have a northbound off-ramp here, comes to a signalized intersection. You can take a right-hand turn to head to the Amoskeag Bridge, or a left-hand turn to go to Goffstown Road. If you're coming over the bridge from Manchester, you can come up and get onto, you can take a right onto the ramp to head north on 293, or you can come down to a signalized intersection right here at Front Street and take a left to these ramps and get on southbound in that direction. The thing about this particular alternative, and this actually works well, the queuing problem that I talked about here of traffic backing up is not a problem now because the spacing here between these 2 signals is better. The issue here with this is there's really 2 issues that come up. One is the intersection right here at Front Street, I'm going to try one more thing here. Give me a second. Let's try this. Now the trick here is I have a remote, a microphone, and this other thing, so I'm going to be doing a little switching, but we're going to do it this way. What we have is a major intersection right here at Front Street and this ramp system. Notice the distance between this intersection here and Coolidge Ave, which is right here. It's pretty close. What would happen here is this intersection, vehicles would queue back to Coolidge from the signal. That would mean that in order to make this work, you'd effectively have to have no left turns allowed at Coolidge. You could have right in, right out, but you wouldn't be able to have left turns. Now, if we end up going with this route, there is a way left turns could happen up at Montgomery. Now, that would handle anybody in here. However, in addition to that, there's a business across the street from Coolidge, and they would not have access to Montgomery, and so prohibiting left turns there would be a problem for that business. So that's one of the downsides to this particular alternative. Another downside to this particular alternative is that since we developed this, a property owner right here off of Coolidge Ave went to the planning department in Manchester with a development plan right in here and got an approval for a development of some residential units there. What that means is that in order to build this ramp system, now the DOT would have to go in and purchase that property. And of course, the property is more expensive, is more valuable now that it has approval from the planning board. It also, if we wanted to avoid purchasing that property, the other way to do it was you could build a very large retaining wall here, but that retaining wall would be about 60 feet high. It would be expensive, and it also would be very obtrusive. It would just look like a major highway. So for those reasons, we developed another alternative. And the other alternative is what we call a modified SPUI, modified single point interchange. And what this one does is has the single point right here with all the same ramp system of the original one that I showed you. What's not here is that crossing, that extra bridge that we were putting in to provide a connection to Eddy Road. What that means is that this section of Eddy Road, this road here, would go underneath Amoskeag and under Front Street, and it actually extends all the way up to exit 7. I'll explain more about that when I show you exit 7. But what would happen is this section of Front Street to Eddy Road would become a 2-lane, low-volume, local roadway as opposed to a high-volume part of the interchange type where ramp systems, kind of where it operates today. Now, if you do that, you have good access to 293. Everybody in Manchester over here can get to the interchange. Everybody coming down Goffstown Road has free access to the interchange. Everybody on the neighborhood on this side all would have access to the interchange. The one group that would not have direct access to the Amoskeag Bridge would be the people on this side of the river, on this southern section of Dunbarton Road and this section of Front Street. What would happen is those individuals would be on this local road, and if anybody who lives, say, over here today, if you think about it, if you were going to downtown Manchester, and you usually go the Amoskeag Bridge, so you come in now and you go around the Amoskeag Circle and then go over the bridge, that access would not be there anymore. Now, there's an upside to a nice local road. There's a downside to those individuals will travel a little further. Let me show you what I mean as far as travel a little further. This is the same diagram, but I've backed out so you can see a bigger area here. So here's the intersection, exit 6. This is Front Street here. There's probably about 900 residential units up in these apartments and condominiums up in this area. So there's a lot of people that live up in this area. And so if this configuration is built, If somebody who lives here today normally comes around the circle and goes over the Amoskeag Bridge to get to this side of Manchester, what they would need to do is come down, and rather than going around this circle, they would not have access to the interchange. They would follow down Eddy Road and take a left on Bridge Street. It's a longer trip, but keep in mind, we've eliminated all the traffic congestion. It's probably going to be a faster trip because this section of road is going to be a very low volume road as opposed to what you use today at the Amoskeag Circle. But the point is, there's trade-offs on this thing. On the one hand, you've got a nice local road, probably on the goods, if people think of that, that's good. On the downside, to some people who live in this area, you have to travel a little bit more to get to downtown Manchester. You still have full access to the interchange. You can get on the highway very easily, but it's getting to the Amoskeag Bridge. Now let me move up to exit, I'm going to come back and talk about that a little bit more, but let me move up to exit 7 so you see how it all comes together. This is the existing exit 7 ramps at Front Street. Currently today, you can only get off from the south and get on to the south. There is no northbound ramps. What we want to do is provide full access, both north and south, at this location. What I told you is that we looked at providing a full new interchange right here, providing both new north and southbound ramps. And what we found was, physically, you could fit it. It's tight, but you could fit the ramps in there. A couple of problems with this. One is the spacing between building a new interchange here and the new interchange at exit 6, they're very close. And if you actually, they're so close that in order to make them work, you'd have to add an auxiliary lane, an extra lane on the highway to add enough capacity for it. That means greater impacts to properties along that area. The other reason we looked at relocating this interchange up to north of the landfill is that, if you remember at the beginning when I talked about the purpose, one of the purposes of this project is to meet the long-term vision of the communities. And the City of Manchester has developed a master plan for the potential build-out of the Hackett Hill area, which is up off of Dunbarton Road. It's probably one of the last really good developable properties in the city. So from an economic development standpoint, there's an advantage to having an interchange rather here, but to have it up here. And so the alternative we're looking at brings that interchange to the north side of the landfill. So rather than having it here, it comes up here. So what would happen is you would have both. You'd be able to get off, heading northbound, you would get off here, you could take a left-hand turn to Dunbarton Road, you could take a right-hand turn to come down to Front Street. You could, coming from the south, now you can get off at this point, go to Dunbarton Road, come down to Front Street. Heading northbound now, there's a northbound ramp. You can get on and head northbound. And from Dunbarton Road, even from the residential area I talked about over on Dunbarton Road, you could now head north and get onto the highway that way. So you have full access both north and south. The other thing that we did with this alternative is to take this connection that's down to Front Street. Back in August when we were here, we brought this in at sort of a T intersection. And we've since looked at that and said, you know what we really should be doing is make this sort of the main connection to Front Street. And you can see it kind of, it's the main line does that. And Old Front Street sort of comes into an intersection. What that does is it encourages all the heavy traffic today that goes down Front Street to exit 6 to go to the new interchange. What that means is that this section of Front Street, from here all the way down to exit 6, is going to be a very low volume road. And the other part we were looking at as part of this study, and the City of Manchester has developed a master plan, a bike plan for their city streets. They had identified this section of Front Street as a future bike connection. And so that actually plays well into that. If you can think of students who maybe come to the community college and maybe live on the west side, they could actually take their bikes and come down this new low-volume road right down to all the way to Eddy Road and on the west side. So there are advantages to that alternative. Again, we're weighing the advantages and disadvantages. If we look at, again, kind of big picture, so here's the same intersection, connection to Dunbarton Road. This is the old Front Street. Here would be the new exit 6. This is this, so again, so from this point, all the heavy traffic would do Front Street this way. From this point, these ramps would be gone at existing exit 7, but the road would still be there. You'd be able to drive underneath the highway. So you'd be able to go from here all the way down, underneath the exit 6, all the way down to Eddy Road. You could drive all the way down to the McGregor Street. And if this becomes the plan, then you have the interchange and the highway volumes out here, and this section, again, like I said, becomes a nice local road that the volumes are low enough so you could have bike lanes and pedestrian sidewalks and all types of things. So those are the things that you need to be thinking about, and we want to hear back from you as to, does that make sense for you, the people who live in this area, and for the city as a whole. The one other thing I want to talk about is the main line. There's 2 lanes of traffic. There's 2 lanes right now on 293 in each direction. When we project traffic out into the future, to our 20-year design horizon, we need to add an additional lane. So the highway would have 3 lanes in each direction. Now, throughout the entire section, it's actually pretty simple. It lays out pretty nice to be able to add an extra lane, with one exception. Down at the southern end, down at the curve area, just between exit 5 and 6, where you go around that curve, what we have is this area on the west side is within the historic district, meaning these buildings, these mill buildings, have historic significance. They also have occupied tenants, which means that if we start widening the road, we're either encroaching on them and impacting that business, or we widen to the other side, which is to the river. You widen to the riverside, now you potentially have environmental impacts that we need to address as part of this. And so we're going to be needing to weigh whether we push towards the river and do whatever we can to minimize environmental impacts to the river, or do we push to the west, which potentially impacts businesses and the historic district. And so as far as the proposed action, is that we will add an extra lane through here. Those details of which way we go, we're still working on that. But tonight, we'd like to hear from you as to which ones are more important for you. So what we have at this point, and actually this is to show you, again, that's that building. You can see the highway is pretty close right here. And you go towards the river, and again, if you widen, you're potentially impacting the river. So at this point, what do we want to do is I wanted to give you enough so you know the big ideas. What we want to do now is we're going to break up and allow you to come up to any of us that have these badges on. There's a number of engineers from VHB, my firm, and there's a number of representatives from the DOT that are here. You can come to us, we'll go over to the maps, we'll answer any questions. You can take your time. I'm thinking that we're planning on taking about an hour to do that. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll kind of wrap up and make sure you've had enough opportunities to say what you want to say. There's a lot of people here tonight. In fact, frankly, I'm excited that you all came out. It's going to make it a little difficult to be one-on-one with everybody, but recognize that if you don't, we'll stay here as long as we can, so we're not going to leave if somebody has a question. But if you don't feel comfortable, either, or don't get a chance to speak to myself or anybody here from the state or put your comments down in writing and give them to us. And if you give us your email address or your phone number and you want me to call you, I will call you and get back to you and answer any questions you have. And so please do that. Keith, anything else you want to do before we break into?
Thanks, Marty. As Marty noted, there's certainly a lot of people here, so what we'd like to try to do is go around the workstation